Ladies and hello, Isaac. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our meeting tonight of the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee. I'd like to welcome councillors and our Mayor and CEO, Chris, and thank you for joining us tonight. We'll start with the statement of acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Gawler people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Gawler people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Gawler people today. Okay. Attendance record. I think we're all in attendance. Councillor Hennessy has an apology. Yes. And so I welcome Isaac, replacing Helen. I think we can move on to declarations of interest. And we have one declaration from Laura, who in her role as an employee of RDA will step out when we talk about some of our planned budgets with relation to the business growth part of the agenda.
Just for the vote?
Just for the vote. Yes, yes, just the vote, yep. Okay, now we have two deputations tonight, and we would move on to those if that's appropriate. And could we ask Louise Drummond to come forward, representing the organisation Three Wise Women?
Absolutely, no, we're using this with that.
Yeah. And following Louise, we have Deborah Good from the Plains Arts, Culture and Events Arts Organisation. So, thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Tony, and it's nice being back here, being able to present to the council. For some of you who wouldn't have known, I was chair of the Gawler Business Development Group, and Karen, my business partner, was the executive officer. We are presenting to you tonight our concept for a business conference, something we did very successfully as the Business Development Group, and which I believe will provide great benefit for the people, the businesses in Gawler. Our conference drew people from well outside Gawler, as well as businesses within. And given that we're the fastest growing and largest area in the north now, there are huge opportunities for businesses to become well established in Gawler and for us to be established as the regional hub for the area. So I do have a handout for each of you to take away with you with our broad overview, and Karen will now go through the more technical side of it, because she is our absolute financial wizard.
Not that I'm going to go into finance as much tonight, it's just a bit of an overview of the concept. So thank you for the opportunity to present our concept for a regional business conference. Our vision is to develop a high quality business conference that strengthens the capability of local businesses while supporting the economic development objectives shared across the region. Small and medium businesses are the backbone of our economy, yet many business owners are so busy working in their business they rarely have the opportunity to work on it. A regional business conference would provide dedicated time to step back, review, plan and identify new opportunities for growth, improve productivity and enhance long-term competitiveness. The event could bring together business owners from across the Gawler, Barossa, Light, Adelaide Plains and surrounding regions for a practical outcome-focused day centred on innovation, resilience, leadership and sustainable business growth. Rather than simply delivering presentations, the conference, which is outlined in the document you're being presented now, would create opportunities for businesses to gain practical knowledge, explore new ideas, build strategic partnerships and connect directly with organisations that can support their future success. A typical conference program, if it's a full day, could begin with networking and a welcome from local business leaders, followed by a nationally recognised keynote speaker discussing topics such as future-proofing businesses in a changing economy. Throughout the day, delegates could participate in expert presentations covering financial sustainability, marketing, digital transformation, workforce development and innovation before choosing from interactive workshops focused on business planning, growth strategies or accessing grants and government support. The day could conclude with a panel of successful regional business owners sharing their experiences, followed by facilitated networking. The focus would be on practical outcomes. Delegates should leave with strategies they can implement immediately, recognising that sustainable business growth is achieved through continuous improvement, collaboration, adaptation, agility and iteration. Beyond supporting individual businesses, a conference of this nature would strengthen the regional business ecosystem by increasing awareness of available support services while fostering collaboration, knowledge sharing, cross-sector partnerships and innovation between councils, government agencies, industry organisations and the local business community. For this committee, supporting a regional business conference represents an investment in economic development. Stronger businesses create stronger communities through increased employment, investment, innovation and long-term regional prosperity. Should you choose to proceed, we would manage the project from concept through to delivery. This includes strategic planning, stakeholder engagement, sponsorship development, speaker coordination, marketing, registrations, logistics, exhibitor management, event delivery and post-event evaluation, providing a single point of contact through the entire process. Finally, we'd like to highlight that this is an area in which we have extensive experience, as Louise has already said. We've successfully planned and managed business conferences, expos and business awards programs, shop local campaigns and competitions, networking events and business development initiatives. Now, very briefly on finances, an event such as this could cost you as little or as much as you would like to spend. The budget would be completely determined by what you would include in the event, whether you would provide meals or whether you would have just refreshments for the attendees. And of course, the highest cost of all of it is the speakers. If you are to engage a notable, nationally known and recognised speaker, you will be paying anything from $10,000 to $50,000 at least for one person. That is an enormous difference in price, but you can get a really good internationally or nationally known speaker for about $10,000 to $15,000 for the entire day, just to give you a bit of an idea. We would welcome the opportunity to chat with you further.
Thank you very much, Karen and Louise. Any questions?
I'd just like to mention that we have most recently held a very successful wedding expo in Gawler, that we were very pleased with the result of that. It was a very targeted market, and so we are still right up there organising events, handling things that will develop business in the area. And we do have a range of other concepts that we feel would be of benefit, but this is the biggest one and the most effective, and that has been proven to be really effective for the businesses in Gawler. So thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Does anyone have any questions for Louise and Karen?
If I could,
Shane?
please, thank you. If there was an opportunity for a sponsor like past expos have had, how would that work if you were engaged to operate everything, would you be able to source a sponsor, or would it be that we would source a sponsor and then put that into the budget we could spend?
That would depend entirely on what you, as a committee, wanted. If you wanted to be working alongside us, or us working alongside you, that's exactly what we would do. And then it could be a combined effort to source a sponsor or sponsors.
I did actually speak to a prominent financial advisor in Gawler this afternoon who's willing to be involved and can provide us with some very interesting contacts.
Yes, Alex.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to continue on that sort of funding aspect, I imagine this is a premium conference. It's going to be a ticketed event. Is your aim potentially for this event to become self-sufficient and on its own way?
Again, that would depend on what the committee would like. In the past conferences that we've done, they have been free for businesses that were members of the Gawler Business Development Group to attend, and anyone from outside of that, so if they were a home-based business or a business outside the region who weren't members, they paid a fee to attend. So you can have a mix of both, or you can make it a totally paid event. A paid event, in my opinion, at the moment in Gawler may not be as successful as a non-paid event for the local businesses because they've been used to having it for free. But that's entirely your decision.
Thank you.
And of course you do get the fees from the levy from the business owners, or well, not from the business owners, from the building owners, so that would come into it too.
Okay, Crystal, one more question.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to understand, with this conference, there seems to be when you go through it, was the focus to have people come in and actually listen and see the keynote speakers and hear from local businesses? Were you wanting outside of Gawler attraction to come to this, or is this solely, Yeah,
you would advertise it far and wide because, to be completely blunt, the more people who come from outside the region, if it's a free event for Gawler businesses, if you have more coming from outside, then obviously you're going to recoup some of your money. You're going to grow the actual conference itself. Well, when we were doing them before, we had people coming from Unley every year because they really enjoyed the expo. They'd register and come every year. So you're actually growing everything about Gawler by doing that.
And that's just what I wanted to make sure. Were we putting this as a business expo or a business conference? Just because I just worry about some of the timelines and wanting to do interactive breakout workshops. If it's more of where it sounds like more of an expo where you want people to come in and listen and bring people to Gawler.
No, it's definitely a conference.
Yeah.
An expo is where you have exhibitors and booths and they come along and talk to the individual exhibitors or vendors. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a conference, a sit-down conference. They would spend all day. There is networking, there's breakout sessions, there's workshops to choose from. But again, of course, that is depends on exactly what the committee want.
Yes.
There's so many different ways that it can evolve.
Yeah.
The outline that you have there is with the concept of a full day, but it can be changed to be, say, a half-day conference. Mm-hmm. But it does need to have a keynote speaker that actually draws people in.
Yes.
And our experience has been that it has been something that people have really enjoyed, having the opportunity of hearing from people who are well known elsewhere and who are outside the area of Gawler. Unfortunately, a prophet is without honour in his own land, so it's very difficult to have local people as keynote speakers.
Oh no, I definitely think you need to invest in a good keynote speaker. I just think we need to make sure that we're doing it with purpose and drawing people in for a conference to listen to a good keynote speaker and breaking it into a half-day thing where, you can come listen to that and then actually do the workshops and see who they benefit. I just wanted to see if it's more like a draw card or if it was we're actually investing in the businesses in Gawler to attend and grow from it. That was all. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Louise and Karen. We now need to move on to our next deputation. Welcome to Deborah Good. And Deborah has been involved with the Plains Arts Culture events, known as PACE, and Deborah is the lady behind our art walk.
Thank you for having me, or PACE. So yes, Plains Arts and Cultural Events, it evolved out of Tony Piccolo's Arts Festival, Arts on the Plains, which ran for a few years prior. Last year was our first iteration of PACE. We felt that it was a better acronym than ATOP. And we also introduced the Art Walk. The Art Walk is something that the focus of PACE is to engage our local community and try and attract tourists into Gawler. Our target audience is adults, teens, families of all ages, and it totally aims to be inclusive. It works by engaging with local businesses to participate at zero cost to the business. So PACE connects artists and businesses and promotes both of them. Artists are both local and regional. So last year we had artists from Clare, from Adelaide, and from the Plains, Kapunda area, as well as local artists. We do this by having a flagship opening, which is held up here, which was incredibly successful last year, and then secondly we did the Art Walk. Last year being the first year, we learnt many lessons. We did the Art Walk over the period of the festival, which runs from Friday the 9th of October this year until Sunday the 18th of October. And last year we held a competition for the Art Walk, which involved people coming and getting questions and asking and answering them. So they had to do the walk, go and look at the businesses, the windows, the art, and then submit their answers. I worked out pretty quickly that we had to change that and have it for the duration of the festival itself, and we are also changing how that's going to occur this year. So this year, I was in Melbourne earlier in the year with the footy, and we came across this book. There was a book crawl happening, and last year we had this DL flyer, which advertised both the business on one side and the artist on the other, and people with the map of Gawler. This year, what people will need to do is actually go into the business and get a stamp or some kind of signature or some recognition that they've actually been in, which then makes it more likely that there could be increased sales or interest in that business or in the future. At the immediate end of last year, we had a lot of businesses, new ones coming in. So we had a total last year of 19 venues. We lost 2, Twig and Bloom or Al Pacchinos, and also the Poetic Posy, site. And then we lost another 2 that neither of those sites were suitable to the event, in that they were off to a distance, or their hours didn't suit. So we haven't engaged with those 2 again this year, but maybe next year. However, we have picked up 7. So we've picked up Imprint Flowers, Spellbound, B Music, Forever Lee, Lippett's Jewellers, Kingsford Hotel and the Exchange have joined into PACE this year. There are a number of ideas that we didn't get to completing last year in terms of the promotion, which we hope to get to this year. Last year we had a major sponsor, which was Business Gawler, and we had 3 community sponsors. That was the Bunyip, and the Bunyip remains a community sponsor, Gawler Makers Market, and of course Gawler Council, thank you, from last year. Our focus for the future is on growing the audience and level of interest and participation beyond Gawler. This year we have the state-funded mural event, which will start on the Saturday or the Friday, and we hope that will attract people from outside of Gawler to come, and particularly over that first weekend. All of the budget money that we're asking for goes completely back to Gawler businesses. So we'll have catering for the opening with Divine Dining. All of the printing is done through the print market, and any other expenses we recycle back into Gawler. The feedback from last year was extremely positive, and the feedback so far this year for the planned events and so on have been extremely positive. And we continue to pursue growth.
Thank you, Deborah. Members, any questions? Alex, Bruno?
Good to see you, Deb. First of all, I love the idea. I mean, this is really one of those things that are going to drive the visitor economy. But I do have some questions. I'm wondering if you've considered creating shareable marketing assets to tap into the business's own social profiles, social presence, rather than sort of relying on ad spending or trying to build an alliance of people involved in this in the business community and using that collective network. Is that something you've considered?
Absolutely. I haven't got to that point yet, but yes, we can definitely do that. And I think, yes, thank you. Anything that is going to grow it and make other businesses, expose them and give them, promote them, yes. PACE will be interested in doing anything like that.
And I suppose you sort of, in what way do you believe the businesses will benefit? I mean, what is it sort of the main retail, hospitality, and what would be the sort of KPIs that you can sort of help to benchmark that for each year, and so that we can sort of gauge that performance?
Look, the responses that we got, we didn't have actual numbers last year, but we're hoping to be able to improve that this year. I understand that Council's got a new device which measures economic activity, and we hope to be able to engage with that this year and get a more definite sort of reading of how this impacts, particularly on that first weekend, and what works. In terms of KPIs, it's really just getting people into Gawler, walking down the street and spending money in the businesses. All of the businesses, that, apart from the two that have left, who were going to remain but then have subsequently left, all of them have said that it had a positive impact on their numbers coming in and out the businesses. And so I think that's the main, key area.
We've got one more, but you have it.
Thanks, Alex. Shane.
So Deborah, so you're here asking for a sponsorship similar to what Business Gawler used to give. That's what
yes.
What was the figure that they sponsored you for?
Last year it was $5,000, and a lot of that was spent. So we have banners now that go across the street and promote it. I'll also show you. We had a lot of these kind of things around. There was also the DL map that led people around to promote both the business and the individual artists.
Yep. So do you have a figure in mind for this year?
Yes, this year we'd like to get the same figure so that we can look at in establishing a website, which we haven't been able to do yet, and also the map, this one that I showed you, getting that designed and printed. And again, the businesses themselves do not pay anything for this. What I do, or what PACE does, is we connect artists with the business, and PACE has established a contract, and a venue contract, an artist contract. Once the artist and venue are linked, then the artist and the venue have their own conversation about bump-in dates, bump-out dates, where they're going to hang, if the venue is going to charge a commission, PACE does not take any part of the commission. We try to make it really easy for both artists and businesses to just do it as simply as possible. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. No other questions? Thank you, Deborah, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move back to our agenda, ladies and gentlemen, and confirmation of minutes is up next. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes? Could I have someone move that the minutes be accepted? Laura's moved that, a seconder. Shane, all in favour? All in favour. Okay, any business arising from the minutes? No business arising from the minutes. So with that, I should just note that Isaac Solomon has left our meeting for a personal reason. He's needed to leave the meeting, so we won't see Isaac again tonight, I believe. So, look, we are here now to discuss the Business Innovation Hub workshop with the councillors, and so I have someone move that we bring item 8.1 of the agenda forward, so that we can address that first before we move on. So, Laura's moved that. Could I have a seconder? Alex Prideaux. All in favour? Okay, all in favour. So, next on the agenda then will be the Business Hub workshop, Business Innovation Hub workshop. And we have two presentations. And I think, Andrew, you're making the first one.
Should be able to do it sitting down, hopefully, if the technology works. Sorry, we have to suspend meeting procedures. Sorry, yeah, it's a step.
Oh, okay.
You need
I need somebody to move that we suspend meeting procedures.
Yeah.
Shane, could I have a seconder? Alex, all in favour? All in favour. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, technology will work, it'll be fine. All right. I'm conscious of time and a lot of people in the room who wish to obviously actively debate this matter, I suspect. So I'll just do a bit of a quick preamble, which will lead into a second presentation from Sonia, who's at the back of the room. I'll introduce you to her shortly. So this is a bit of a brief summary of what was in our mind at staff level in terms of operating models. So we're just here to talk about what some of those models might look like and to, I guess, allow an interaction between the committee and elected members to inform a debate later in the night on a separate agenda item, which will from there potentially go back to council for a decision. In terms of the current business model, I'll take it largely as read, so I'm not going to read every single dot point here, but I think everyone's relatively familiar with what the current Business Innovation Hub is. You know where it is, you know how it's set up. You've all been briefed previously. It has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. And I think that's covered generally in what I've presented. And there are some challenges with it, which we've acknowledged. In terms of the options, we think there are 5. I've already heard in quiet conversation that there may be more than 5 options. But in any event, in our mind, there were 5. And they were substantially business as usual, which is to run it as a co-worker space where there's a mixture of casual and more permanent operators of desks.
where there are basically no support services in terms of mentoring and the like. Option 2 is closure of the hub entirely, which would mean the existing tenants would be at some near point politely requested to leave the premises. Option 3 would be incubator model with a defined tenure and target business support, which would have a cost attached to it. Option 4 was more of a commercial proposition where there would be a decision in terms of price point, and you could argue that that might bring with it other expectations from tenants if they're paying more than they are today in terms of admin support, more of a corporate model. And 5 is whatever we haven't thought of, and 1 to 4 above. In terms of the positives and negatives, every decision has consequences. I think the business as usual, there's an element of the known with it, which to some people might be considered a positive. It does meet a certain market need. Its negative is that you probably argue a reasonable case that businesses don't necessarily leave the premises once they've decided to go elsewhere with any particular additional skill sets learnt from being in the hub. You could argue reasonably, I think, that the way it's set up wasn't the original intention with the hub. There's been criticisms ongoing about whether its competitively neutrality is being met or not. And there has been instances of some leaving and then coming back for a range of reasons. The closing of the hub has its positives, potentially. It's a highly valuable space, for sure. It could be used for something else. And in theory, there might be some tenants who would secure office space somewhere in the town, but that's somewhat speculative. It's a case-by-case consideration. The negative is that there are some benefits of the current arrangements. There isn't at the moment an exit strategy in terms of alternative use. And you could reasonably argue that Council's decision some years ago to remove all support services has taken the business away from what it was intended to be. Option 3, I won't go into too much detail because that's the next presentation, but certainly there are models around Greater Adelaide of hubs that do work particularly well, but they do require investment and a clear direction. Option 4 is a commercial model, as I've already indicated. You would expect that there'd be less criticism in terms of competitive neutrality, but there would almost certainly be a need for administrative support, which you'd expect would be funded through the additional charges levied. And the negative on it would be that you would almost certainly have more vacant office space, and again, it moves away from perhaps the intent of the hub in the first place. And option 5 is basically an open question in terms of what it could or should be. So, as I said, this was just a bit of a warm-up. I'm happy for Sonia to come forward if she wishes to. I'll give her, I'm going to load her presentation.
Hi. Nice to see you, nice to meet you. Good evening, Mayor, Shanks, councillors, committee members, Chief Executive Officer and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this workshop. My name is Sanya and I'm here to share some insights about the potential future of the Gawler Innovation Hub. Tonight, it's about exploring the possibilities, specifically how Council might consider transitioning the hub from a standard co-working space into a highly active economic catalyst that drives long-term growth for Gawler's local businesses and youth. The current landscape, since 2021, the hub has functioned primarily as a passive co-working space, and while it maintains a modest surplus, relying solely on desk rental can sometimes create a challenging overlap with private commercial operators. For a progressive council, this naturally raises the important conversation around competitive neutrality. By shifting the focus slightly, there is an excellent opportunity to move away from simply waiting for businesses to rent a desk and instead explore ways to actively build, scale, and embed viable local enterprises here in Gawler. To understand the potential of a revitalised space, it's helpful to look at broader economic data. Recent insights from Economic Development Australia reveal a powerful macroeconomic reality. For every $1 invested in local economic development, there is an enduring local benefit of between $3.49 and $4.12. Therefore, the data shows that 60% of job growth happens organically through existing small business. Therefore, an effective strategy council might consider isn't just about trying to attract outside companies, but rather cultivating the sole traders and micro businesses already in Gawler so they can grow, hire locally, and eventually graduate into commercial storefronts. In exploring how to maximise this asset, several paths forward emerge. Maintaining business as usual or acting purely as a commercial landlord are options, as you've heard, though they might not fully resolve the competitive neutrality considerations or provide the intense business support local traders are seeking. On the other end of the spectrum, closing the hub entirely carries its risks of losing emerging businesses and increasing economic leakage to neighbouring areas. So this brings us to the compelling alternative worth exploring, transitioning the facility into an active incubator model. This workshop presents an opportunity to consider a strategic framework defined by structured tenure and targeted business support. This model explores making a hub from program heavy and desk light. Instead of indefinite tenancies, Council could consider implementing defined and capped timelines. This essentially positions the hub as a transitional launchpad. Local business receive structured mentoring and workshops that they need, and then they're supported as they graduate out of the hub and into the local commercial property network market. Because Council is supporting growth rather than competing on rent, this approach beautifully balances competitive neutrality principles. When looking at various directions Council could take, an incubator framework aligns closely with standard local government economic development objectives. It focuses heavily on business retention, regional growth, and mitigating market distortion. Most importantly, it allows Council to achieve a highly visible, measurable impact on the community, transforming a property management exercise into a proactive economic development success story. While this presents a fresh direction for Gawler, this model is backed by an immense precedent across South Australia. In my 12 years mentoring in the SAYES program with the South Australian Chamber of Commerce, as well as acting as the head of pitch consultants acting as the head of pitch consulting across every campus of Adelaide Uni's ThinkLab incubators, I have seen firsthand how structured frameworks can transform businesses. Local government spaces can thrive too, as seen with Polaris Centre events or the City of Unley's Fish Tank initiative. Today, councils like Unley, West Torrens, Tea Tree Gully are actively utilising these structured entrepreneurship programs. It is a robust, well-researched approach that delivers consistent, low-risk public value. To help you visualise what this idea might look like in practice, let's walk through a brief generic example of how a revitalised space operates from day one. Imagine a local Gawler resident, let's call her Sarah, who has been running a micro business from her kitchen table. Under the new model, Sarah doesn't just rent a desk, she enters a structured 6-month enterprise program. On day one, the hub is alive, not with quiet solo workers, but with a cohort of 15 local businesses undergoing a guided workshop. Over the coming weeks, Sarah receives targeted mentorship, refines her business model, and learns how to manage cash flow. By month 3, the space hosts a community showcase where Sarah connects with local suppliers and mentors. By month 6, Sarah's business has grown enough that she hires her first local employee. She successfully graduates from the hub, moving into a vacant shop front on the main street. The hub has done its job. Sarah's business is thriving in the community, and her old desk is immediately taken by the next emerging local entrepreneur. And that's how the community continues to benefit. This story highlights the kind of exact momentum and self-sustaining economic activity that this model is designed to create. Ultimately, tonight is a collaborative session to see if this direction aligns with your vision for the region. And if, yes, we have plenty of time set aside to make this a true workshop, so we can open the floor to your thoughts, look at the data together, answer questions you have, and dig into some of the success stories I've seen in other hubs.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, any questions for Sonia? Alex?
There you go, Sonia.
Hi.
Great presentation.
Thanks.
That's kind of the thing that you get out of an accelerator program, is learning how to do presentations.
Yes.
I'll try and mix some of these questions in one-to-one. So, are you looking to? Is it my understanding that your organisation is looking to run the Option 3 program?
No, it's not the option. It's just to explain.
It's just explaining.
Just
So
explaining
you're
the
just here to
opportunity,
explain it. Yeah.
Just explaining what could be done in the space.
Okay. All right. Do you have an idea of the kind of cost that would be involved?
That would require a little bit more analysis. I am relying on a few people in your team here because I'm an external, obviously, and I'm unaware of what you might already have invested locally, and I've also heard about things that are invested in from, say, RDA that I've heard has happened in the past. I would need to investigate what you already have and then add what I've seen work elsewhere. However, the model I've seen work elsewhere is a subsidised model, where there's skin in the game for the participants, whether it's from ThinkLab or any of these programs I mentioned across every council. There's usually a fee for participation from the business.
So you mentioned a couple of other council models. Can you sort of just tell me how one of those work? You know, in terms of that kind of. Because the way I see it is, there's a corporate or there's a non-for-profit kind of model, right? But I'd imagine there's an ability for council to partner with someone. Is that kind of how it works? Like you mentioned subsidised, I kind of have a similar idea, but yeah, go on, sorry.
Sure, no problem. Look, I'll give you a case study of one that we have run alongside City of Unley in the past. It's called Fish Tank, which is Shark Tank for kids. It's adorable. But it is around youth and young people developing their business. And so that was heavily sponsored by a council because they wanted to offer it at almost no cost to kids in their area, youth from the age of 14 to 25. However, by my recommendation, I said if kids don't have skin in the game, they won't see value. So there was a nominal fee. Out of that, it resulted in a 6-week structured program and then another 6 weeks of mentorship before they finally pitched to real investors. One of which was Sam, the founder of Sam's Popcorn, which was really cool to see it come from ideation right in that early stage program. And he participated at 16 and then did his structured program, everything from legals to marketing, all with expert facilitators, did his 6 weeks of mentorship, and then graduated, and he now, at 18, stocks petrol stations, airports, every foodland, and hotel rooms as well. And so he's turning over a couple of million as an 18-year-old.
Yeah, great. And I got so wrapped by that story, I forgot everything else I was doing.
But basically, yes, there's lots of success models I've seen, and from City of Tea Tree Gully, City of West Torrens, Charles Sturt, and a few others.
Is there a model that you know of or could imagine that would involve the Business Innovation Hub being seen as an accessible resource to the entire Gawler business community that'll end up paying for it?
Yes. An example of something I've seen work as far as accessibility to public is ThinkLab. So although, yes, I am at ThinkLab, which is within a university, and many of their programs are structured e-challenge, tech e-challenge through the uni for students. They then do something with the City of Adelaide through ADA to get a Think Seed program running so that local businesses are able to participate and making programs and those experts accessible to the public. not just through ticketed programs like that, but then they'll do things like lunch and learns that literally anyone can come to and hear brilliant speakers like the founder of Sweat come and sit down and talk to us, which was really exciting, and we sold out in about 3 hours.
Yeah, that's. Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Can I paraphrase?
Sure.
Or to whatever. So basically, I'd imagine there'd be like key events, maybe pitch events from people in the program, or you might have some keynotes come in, and you might need a space like this. Is there an opportunity, even though because it's funded effectively by council, and I suppose there's maybe even the participants, but the business community is invited as an audience to experience that and then get some value out of it. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's how it ran with our graduating class fish tank, was that the whole of Unley community was invited to a ticketed event, and then that also subsidised the program for the kids. But it meant lots of local business was in the room hearing the pitch, and yes, at the front was the big scary Shark Tank table of investors, but behind them was about 100 people who were watching these kids pitch, and they were all local businesses. Similarly, when we run these high-profile events at Think Lab, when we're having the founders of the Udi guy came and spoke as well, people just want to sit down and hear how someone in Adelaide made an $850 million business. And so it's quite easy to get local business to come into the room for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Shane?
In 2018, Think Lab tended to operate the hub. The fee was two different fee structures. One was $219,000 plus GST per annum, the other was $240,000. So they've been up here before to tender on this operation. Are you aware of that, or you weren't involved?
I'm not involved because I'm not employed by the uni.
Okay.
I'm contracted.
Sure. What? So this option has a cost that says 50% of GBDC funding potentially. Is that what we're suggesting, or I don't understand that part?
Through the chair, that's one scenario that the committee could look at, which is if it wanted to immediately fund support services. We had a bit of a conversation offline before we prepared the report, just scoping out what a indicative number might be in terms of support services. The number we came up with was $80,000 roughly. That needs a little more sort of bedding down in terms of exactly what programs you would provide and how that, exactly when you'd run that out. But we hadn't got to the point of looking at what charges you would make of tenants and whether you'd change the structure and how it's set up with the current hub. But in the event that there's no funding at the moment in council's budget, unless the committee were able to convince the council that they should fund it, the money would have to come from somewhere. Alternatively, the committee might form a view that it wants to explore this further, but it is not in an immediate rush to make that decision, and it may wish to do so for next financial year, for example.
Sure.
The council examples that you gave, do you know if they're funded by the council or by an economic development levy on the businesses there?
Sure. So City of Unley, their fish tank program is funded by council for their kids, heavily subsidised rather, because I wanted the kids to participate. City of Charles Sturt does a pretty heavy subsidy on their programs from council. There are corporate sponsorships for a lot of their programs as well. So there's often corporate sponsorship that makes it really accessible for the business owners or lessens the pressure on the budget so that the next time they run it, council doesn't have to invest. Yes.
Alex?
What kind of what kind of innovations, what kind of businesses are we talking about that typically are in the cohort of people going through? Effectively, I guess what I'm trying to understand is what is actually the long-term value of these businesses that grow at the expense of Gawler? Are they reasonably going to stay in Gawler? Because if we're talking tech businesses, I don't think that's possibly going to be the case. So I'm just wondering what are typically the type of industry that we're talking about?
Yep, no, you raise a very good point, and it definitely depends on the location. An example would be City of West Torrens. I've seen many of the participants in those programs have a heavy tourism focus because of the airport and the beaches, that a lot of the businesses have a tourism flavour to them, whereas ThinkLab is heavily tech. From my research, out here would be heavily agriculture, and so there's your stone's throw from a lot of farmland, from a lot of winery. There'd be a lot of potential participants around that, as well as local makers. I know that you do quite a lot in your makers market. So for that reason, with your proximity to such rich agricultural land, it's unlikely that people would move.
Okay. Yes, Cody?
Yeah, so just a question around... Just a question around the idea of the defined tenures and all that sort of thing. Do you have examples from the other places of how defined are the tenures?
Yeah, sure. So an example with ThinkLab is that upon entry to a program, there's an agreement, and so it will stipulate exactly which program you're participating in. You're part of Think Seed, heavily sponsored by City of Adelaide and NAIDA. You go through your structured 12-week program. After that program finishes and you've done all your classes and your mentorship, you then pitch and you get a residency for about 6 months. It gives you a co-working desk in the open space, but it's actually in the agreement that you sign that is for a term of 6 months. I have seen them add +6 on outcomes, so you can do a 6-month extension if you have hit certain milestones of growth that you just need a little bit more support from. But then upon the finishing of those 12 months, then you're out of the space and that desk goes to someone else. And that's why the structured tenure, we've seen a lot of times people go, I've only got 12 months, I'm going to maximise what I've got here. They meet with their mentors all the time. They're making the most of their network so they can accelerate growth, and they find other spaces after that.
Thank you. And so with that fish tank example, did any of the young people go on to be tenured in the space, or was that simply a program untethered from the tenure situations?
That particular program, because it was for youth, they couldn't sign any agreements underage or anything like that, so they were given a program to accelerate their businesses. They were, in collaboration with us at ThinkLab, offered desk space if they needed to touch down and work with other businesses. That's just in collaboration with the uni as a gesture of goodwill. But City of Adelaide didn't actually have a hub like you do that they offered to those kids, so it was just the program itself that they invested in.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Yes, Laura?
Thank you. Thank you. I just have a question around timing. From when, say, a council engages someone like you to start preparing a program, how long does that kind of take from that initiation to day one of a program?
Mm-hmm. Luckily, because we are involved in so many, it's set and ready. The only thing that I would not necessarily have locally is the mentor. So a lot of the mentors we're using elsewhere, I just pull on my Adelaide Uni resources, I pull on City of whichever ones we're working with, and we have those resources of mentors locally. The only thing I'd rely perhaps on the committee and the council and my colleagues would be to find those local mentors. That's the most valuable part, is the local fabric coming into the program. But if that network isn't difficult to build, then the actual program itself, the curriculum, the speakers, everything, it's set and ready. I could run it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, Mick?
Thank you for that. Just in regards, we're doing a lot of references back to the other councils and that. How long have they been running for, and how much actual data have we got to say what's going back and what benefit is the actual community or the business community getting out of it in the whole?
Sure. So as far as I'm aware, Fish Tank is one of the most recent ones. They started this youth program. It's only been about 8 to 10 years only, but that's pretty significant. But the oldest programs will be coming out of City of West Torrens, because they've put such a focus on developing their business economic area. They've got their Women in the West and specific programs that they've been running. For this purpose, I was using macro data that I had access to on the slide, but I could find some more specific. Some of that is reported internally in their council. I could find out more specific data if that's helpful. But the oldest serving hub that I've seen that has the greatest success is the uni-based one at ThinkLab, established in 1940 something.
Okay, can I follow up for that?
Yes, Mark.
Just Are they utilising, like sort of the fish tank doesn't utilise a similar sort of setup that we do, but these other councils, are they operating the same, or have they got the same resources that we've got? We've got tables and all that sort of stuff to them. So I'm just trying to get the tenure of how long we're going out and what they're doing, what we're doing different.
You are very unique in the way that you've got a space that could function similar to what I see working at ThinkLab, but running programs where a lot of these other councils are strictly program heavy. Program heavy is good, but they don't actually have the option like you would to then facilitate the space where someone could grow their business in-house. That's missing in most councils. There are some options that they'll house their more significant businesses in-house, or they'll give them, function rooms for events and things like that. But this kind of model, you're, as far as I can tell, blending what ThinkLab does with what a council HEP program does, and it's quite unique in that regard. I haven't seen a lot of spaces in my council work with what you've got.
So what would how would we work on the projection of how that's going to benefit us in the town of Gawler, particularly the town of Gawler sort of thing? So it looks if it's very unique, then we're pioneers on this. So yes. I'm very curious to see how these actually are currently working without the situation that we've got, and the actual numbers of how many people are going into and continue on with businesses. And then I guess, that's why we've got smarter people in the room to work out what it's actually going to be worth to us, sort of thing. So
yes, that's right. So I would defer to people who are experts in economic development to pull some numbers, but I do have obviously success stories that I've seen work elsewhere. It tends to be pretty heavy around the university, obviously with ThinkLab. The only one that I think is slightly different, and that's relatively recent, is Polaris Centre with the City of Salisbury, where there is space, but that hasn't been around as long as some of these other council programs, and there is definitely success there, so much so that Polaris is expanding into Mount Barker and Murray Bridge and just going everywhere. So that is an example of success, seeing how a council that therefore does offer that desk space, albeit there is a private entity involved, but it is proving successful. There's a lot of growth with Polaris at the moment.
Okay, Cody?
So in terms of these other council-run ones, do you know what the breakdown is between how much of these programs and management and everything is being done internally by staff as opposed to, bringing on a consultant to run a program or something like that?
As far as I can see, the programs I'm aware of, they're all external. It doesn't put pressure on staff for any delivery. They've been contracted to external providers who bring with them not just entrepreneurial knowledge, but the ecosystem networks, so that they can pull in the expert speakers and mentors, and they have the experience of challenging these businesses to grow. So the way I've seen the success is that in almost every situation, it's an external provider who's contracted to provide the service with their ecosystem knowledge.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex.
Thank you. Thanks for the grilling. I really appreciate you taking all the slings and arrows.
No worries.
Have you got any experience in terms of any of these programs being able to obtain some sponsorship to help cover the funding from it? It seems like there's an opportunity for sponsorship, and maybe that might not happen on the first go round, but yeah, can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. Even though Adelaide Uni is pulling heavily on uni funds to deliver their programs, an example would be that Think Her is sponsored by Sweat. And so it means that they're able to offer this program completely free to women in the university because it's sponsored externally. And from my experience in that, there's very little, traditional sponsorship. They don't get up and do their speeches and their promos and anything like that. They've just got their logo on it. And so it's, I have seen the option where corporate sponsorship can subsidise programs. It usually works around either women-led programs or youth, where they're trying to make sure that programs can be accessible to all. But having said that, in councils, there's often a layer of sponsorship somewhere in the program. For example, you might have your structured workshops with expert facilitators coming in, and that's all fine, co-sponsored and subsidised. But then you come to your graduation dinner, where they're doing their final pitch and the presenting to real investors, and they might be a gala And in order to justify the expense of putting a gala on, that ends up being heavily sponsored and people jump on that.
Thank you.
And all the facilitation of that is done by the program.
The program lead, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
great.
We also like the idea of bringing in a genuine expert in every subject matter. So rather than someone who's run a business saying, I know everything, we'll bring in the expert on every particular line item from risk mitigation, AI, whatever it might be. It should be run by someone who is genuinely an expert in that subject matter, not just a business owner.
Thank you, Sonia. Any other questions? Sure. Our Mayor, Nathan.
Sure.
Just around the Stretton Centre at Playford, do you know much about their model, and can you give me the comparisons here? It's like programs, obviously they've got a co-working space that they're able to host workshops, etc. Bringing something like that online in Gawler, we would potentially be in direct competition about 15 minutes away. I'm not saying that our regional growth wouldn't support two hubs like that, but just something that I'm just trying to understand, because technically we could still run these programs and leave the business innovation hub space out of it for a moment, how other council areas have successfully, as you've articulated. So I'm just trying to, I guess, weigh up the pros and cons, because the programs and the business innovation hubs could work in a parallel, but they could also work quite separately as well.
Yep.
So that hybrid model is not off the table either. So how does that then relate to what they do in Playford, if you know about their program?
A little. I have been invited to speak there a few times on various events. The difference being that they are single program workshops for the most part. So you'll go to, we've got an event on AI, and it's that one event, or it might go for a day or two. Whereas structured programs, like what I've seen with full innovator frameworks, it will cover ideation, business modelling, legals, marketing framework, everything. And I haven't seen such a structured program at Stretton yet. I've seen some subject matter specific workshops that come into a niche and they happen once off, rather than something you can invest in and be part of for a whole year and paired with a mentor for that whole time. So they haven't run something like this. They run some programs, but they don't necessarily have the same outcome.
Okay.
Yeah, a lead question.
Alex?
We're going to have a debate after this, right? Is that right?
Yes,
Not with me.
I guess we just
All with me.
we just need to ask questions.
Yeah, not a problem. More questions, more welcome.
I've got a hunch that I want to argue, but I'll just clarify something with you,
Yeah,
which
sure.
is could we ask the program lead to create a program that is specific to a problem that Gawler has, like a specific commercial problem that we have, or a specific commercial solution that we're looking for, so as to create that solution through the program that helps to the community. And in particular, I'm thinking visitor experiences, tourist experiences, and that sort of thing. So we're being very targeted. Is that something that, we could potentially find a tender for a program of that kind?
Absolutely. If you're aware of what your local constituents need, if you're aware of what your local businesses struggle with, that can be factored into the service delivery fully. Something to keep in mind with structured programs is that in this structured program, especially that early stage entrepreneurship, they have to kind of get the basics. So it's like how to do your contracts, how a marketing plan works, just those real basics. However, when we get to those how a marketing plan works, it can be done with a filter that makes sense for the local community based on the needs that are presented. So absolutely, the facilitators can be advised based on what the local businesses need, but they'll still need to get all their foundational learning to build a viable business.
Yes, Crystal?
We just don't turn it off near you, do we? I guess I like the idea of like a hybrid model where we kind of keep the business innovation hub and introduce the programs and mentoring. Like that would kind of like be an option 5 for me. But I guess how many people businesses actually participate in these programs to make them successful? And like, how does that work? Like, I don't actually even know how many desks are in that innovation hub or anything like that, but like just a number, like what kind of number do you need to actually really make these programs successful and worth the dollar value?
Sure. The sweet spot's between 10 and 15 for a very specific reason. It's about how they get paired up and how many mentors you'd need to be able to deliver it. But it also means they've got accountability to a realistic number of people that they work with every time. So between 10 and 15 is the absolute sweet spot. When you start getting much smaller cohorts of, say, 2 or 3, then the accountability drops a fair bit. It can be really challenging for them to show up when there's lesser people, and you don't necessarily get as many high caliber mentors through when you don't have a large cohort. So 10 to 15 ideally. From a brief walkthrough that I did recently with Suman, there is ample desk space as far as I can tell. I mean, was it 19 or something? There's more than enough 20 odd desk spaces. Having said that, there could be a reconfiguration if necessary. So yeah, that I think would be the sweet spot. And something else to add to what we were saying earlier is that it's not necessarily always early stage businesses. It's not always just the young people with a brand new business or someone, it could be someone who is running a home business and successfully. Or it could be someone who is just at that scale up phase and they actually do have a commercial shop front, but they want to grow and they can actually come in and participate in programs without needing the desk space because they qualify for a different type of program, like a scale up rather than a startup.
Do we have any other questions for Sonia? Then thank you very much, Sonia, for your presentation and for answering so many questions.
Oh, anytime. I'll stick around.
So I guess now we're back to the workshop, and I guess I could just ask one question of the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee. Do you see the Innovation Hub being funded by the separate levy?
Negatory.
So does anyone think that this is really for the benefit of the councillors? So would that be a unanimous call that we don't think it should be funded by the separate rate? So I guess it now comes down to a decision about whether we think there should be a role for council in developing aspiring business entrepreneurs.
I think there's also a role for us that don't make the same mistakes against.
Yes. Sean, would you like to
Yes.
just expand on your
I think
experiences?
there's a role for us that the council doesn't make the same mistakes again. Because in 2018, they had a response to a tender from Think Lab, which just come up tonight. In 2018, they had a response to the tender for an ag tech-focused business innovation hub, which they knocked back. Both were brought up tonight. We can help to make sure they make the right decisions, but it's going to be their bread, not our. We have 400 businesses to represent. We're going to take half of that and support 20 that could be competitors at the end of the day. It's not all in all a bad thing, but we can't face our levy payers and explain that to them, you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, and I agree with Jane's position there. Alex?
I think the council should support innovation and growth, but the business levy is obviously, I feel is its remit is really to support the people who pay the levy, really, and also grow the town. But it is a big expensive item, and it would basically blow out the budget effectively. But there does seem to be an opportunity to hit 3 birds with 1 stone in my estimation. We sort of have, with the developing prospectus, we might have an idea of what some of the growth industries we're looking to create, especially in terms of visitor experiences, heritage experiences. We also have a pretty generously funded youth program. It seems to me that we could combine the youth program with entrepreneurship and try and solve some of the kind of practical sort of jobs on the ground that can actually help create some experiences, like tour experiences or bike hire, like simple businesses, but maybe draw upon some of the budget from other departments that are already spending on in terms of the council.
Yes, Cody.
Also, firstly, just on the youth programs, we do have business aligned, so school holiday programs and things. Chris at Divine Dining does the barista training courses in that cafe, for example, and those sort of work upskill programs and things. I guess speaking as a councillor, my concern with the consultants and such is just that it's an unknown budget. If it was a matter of we've got an economic development officer now, they are going to be providing support inside the hub or something, that's a known cost, that's an employee expense. But mysterious number of programs is something that I think we would need things clarified on the councillor's end.
Yes, Andrew.
Through the chair, I guess that it seems to me that the council, maybe the committee's at a fork in the road where they need to make some very fundamental decisions. Some things we're not going to answer tonight in terms of populating and putting, clothes on the skeleton, so to speak, in terms of what a fully activated business hub would be. But I think the first question you need to ask yourself is whether or not council/committee need to have a hub of any sort. If the answer is council should not have any involvement in these activities, we should close it all down, then there's nothing more to debate. The problem's solved. But if the question is, well, we're curious and we'd like to know more about how you could do it in a, I won't use the word smarter way, but in a more strategic way in terms of how you spend the money and what the return on investment is, I think that's a conversation which I would suggest has greater merit than closing down the hub. And that's probably why I brought in the second speaker, because she's much more eloquent than I am. And I think there are models that do show that there are ways forward. Whether we've got all the answers tonight or not, I doubt we do. But I think there are some off-the-shelf ideas which we could probably bring relatively quickly to council. We could have another workshop if that's what you want. We could flesh out what these things are. But certainly previously, it was unclear to me whether there was any appetite whatsoever to continue the hub in any form. And that's why we've given you 5 options, and we're really in your hands as to what you want.
Yes, Nathan.
I don't disagree that the separate levy is not for this purpose. I think the Business Innovation Hub was a council-led initiative and not one that I think should be handed over to separate levy payers that actually have well-established businesses or commercial landlords that potentially won't utilise the programs, to the members' points. But the future of the Innovation Hub, however my years in this chamber has always been, we need to understand what that space, what that real estate is getting us for a return on investment. Now, there are multiple options that we could look at, and I think we've covered certainly a few. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that one. But you could invest money in running programs, and you could turn that space into a premium commercial space for another business, do a deal, and the profits from that tenancy could be directly invested into the programs. I'm not saying that's what we should be doing, but I'm just saying those are the sorts of options that you could be looking at. Then you could also be looking at the programs benefiting from the real estate that we do have in this building, which we did secure money from the federal government to deliver on a program that I don't really believe that we ultimately have got there yet. And I think we are a little bit sheepish because we have been burnt in the past as a council from entering into maybe the wrong relationship. So I don't think we're going to answer all the questions necessarily tonight, but I do think there is an appetite more broadly within the chamber, and I hope I'm speaking and feeling the room right within this committee, that we do want economic outcomes, big and small, within our town. So some of those opportunities that programs that have been presented tonight, I would like to understand and really see the raw data of, and no offence to the presenter, great sales pitch, I reckon there's some good news stories there, but we also need to understand the risks and rewards, because if we're going to weigh up the return on investment, we need to be clear that if we're going to fund a program that's, I'm going to pick a figure, 200 grand a year, and we're going to use ratepayer money to do it, we need to be very clear on what the return on investment is, and we need to be able to present that data back through to you guys so that you can help us with that confidence that, yes, this is the right thing to be doing, and then it'll feed the future levy payers moving forward. It's an open-ended sort of conversation here, but I don't think there's no appetite. I think there's always been an appetite. I just don't think we've ever been confident on pulling the trigger on running in a direction that costs us money. I think we're confident in a minor surplus, which for some reason the latest figures that I thought we had was a minor deficit, but a few grand here and there is not what we're talking about. I think the next investment is a big one if we want to go anywhere other than not being a commercial landlord.
Thank you, Nathan. I guess, Shane, would you like to?
Yeah, well, potentially an option 5 is you go back to the market and say, what can we do with this space? Because the 2018 proposals had podcasting, video conferencing, Twitch, all predated COVID, all were new ideas at the time, and none of them were used. They might come to us with ideas that we haven't thought of. And that's then, as this group, we can assist, say that's fantastic in terms of business, helping the businesses that we represent that might come in and use those functions as well.
Look, if I could just make a comment and try and summarise the position of this committee. I think what I'm hearing is that we would like to see a separate rate used to stimulate business activity broadly for the town and in benefit to all 400 or 500 businesses, rather than an activity that may benefit relatively few. Would everyone agree with that?
Correct.
So in other words, from our committee's point of view, the business innovation hub would be a very low priority.
Turn it into a data centre.
Just frosting those.
Can I just maybe add to that? And I think while we don't see us maybe investing in this financial year into options for the business hub, but maybe over the financial year we investigate the options further and what kind of budget we would be looking at, so that we can go to council for the 27-28 financial year with a clearer picture of what different models would cost, both if we did maintain it as a business hub and in-house programs, or just programs without putting the hub to another use as well. So look at this being, okay, maybe there's some investigations that occur in the next 12 months to be able to put a proposal for the 27-28 budget.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Yes, Alex?
Maybe I'm wasting time here, but I more or less wanted to make the same point. It seems like we could just do business as usual to the end of the financial year, and in the meantime seek a tender for a third party or seek tenders for pitches for these incubator programs to give us an idea of what costing is, what they need, how that operating works, and then make a decision before the next council budget, so that it can be costed into the council budget. And that's more or less paraphrasing what you said. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Cody?
Yeah, so just agreeing with a few things that have been said. I think for me, I just need to understand, I guess, because I feel like the programs are almost entirely a separate discussion. This whole civic centre is a programs and events space. If we didn't have a hub, we could have expos, we could have 12-week programs. Sometimes I come into this space and they're using it for first aid courses or whatever. So like the programs, we can just have a bigger events budget. That's sort of almost a separate discussion from what's the use of the hub. And so I guess I just need to understand the part around the actual day-to-day use of the hub as well. So that's just my comments.
Okay, thank you, Cody. I guess what councillors are looking for from us is an opinion on now whether the Gawler Business Innovation Hub should be continued in some form or otherwise. Am I right in reading that it's collective discussion? Am I right in reading from the business community though that it's a low priority?
Yes and no. It's not a low priority because if the right mix of things happen in there, we benefit and partake of them or even fund some of them. That's why, what is the cost to council to go out to tender with a broad scope of tell us what you got? Is there no cost to council for that? And that if we get some solutions back and some ideas, they might be amazing. Or they might be, they're no good for us.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I think the cost of that's virtually nil. We'll do that in-house. We'll put that together. Just add CEO's point of view for a minute. My concern with the 80,000, for example, is how much you're effectively investing in 10 to 15 people, and then you do the maths on what's the percentage success rate. And I'm being pessimistic, but it might turn out that you've invested 80 grand to support one business. And I'm not comfortable that I could recommend to council that's a sound investment. If we're looking to add another $80,000 cost, I'd certainly want to have an understanding of other participants if this thing does go in a certain direction. Do the participants get a free ride, or are they expected to make an investment as well? If, for example, you might say, well, I'm just plucking numbers. You might say, well, if we've got a great program and it's going to cost you 10 grand, but we'll pay for 5. But you got to contribute skin in this game, because I'd be afraid that it's not the right word, but the stickability of people seeing through a program to get the outcome is in question. But I do like the idea of see what the market comes up with, and that way you have certainly some more information to make an informed decision.
If I could just interrupt quickly. Sanya, would you like to come and sit down and you can join the discussion?
Just press the top of it.
Okay, no problem. Excellent. It was simply just to reiterate based on something you just said about the cohort of 10. I should have clarified that's per session. So we've seen that multiple programs can run at a time. So it might be 8 programs at once. You might have 80 to 100 cohorts coming through at any given week. So it's not 10 for the year, it's 10 per program.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, just in case that skewed any of the perspective, it's not about 10 for the year.
I'm struggling, and I'm happy proven wrong, but I'm struggling to understand in my head how we run a current innovation hub, and we have how many people, Andrew? How many people sitting there now?
At the moment, 15, 16 desks.
Right. How are we suddenly going to have 100 people come out of the woodwork to be part of a program? I'm struggling to get my head around that. Because bear in mind, we don't have the catchment or the size of Playford or a Charles Sturt, who are many times the population. I could be missing something, but just struggling with that piece.
No, of course. So it was just simply to clarify if there was the concern about the minimum cohort, the maximum numbers of people going through a program. If your space was only going to see 10 per year, it wouldn't necessarily be like that. You'd ideally want to maximise the opportunity for your local constituents. And similarly, not everyone who participates in a program necessarily needs a desk. And so what I've seen happen in the past is that you'll get access to your desk in limited capacity. So you come in for your workshop, you get access to a desk on that day or 3 days a week or whatever it might be in some kind of rotation. More often than not, it would be the capacity of the venue running at that time. And like I said, if it's a 6 to 12 week program, you're running through cycles of multiple cohorts, multiple programs. It could be think seed, think boards, think sales, examples, many programs at once, but then not everyone taking the capacity of the desk available. So if we've got 19, 20 desks, it'd be planned accordingly. Obviously your cohort in your region might be smaller, but you want to maximise what you've got, make the most of the space you've got.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just an overarching comment. I think there's a question here about are we looking to spend money to make a space viable, or should we disconnect the two and determine whether, as a council, we want to invest in innovation startups and etc. Kind of separate from the thinking about the innovation hub as a square metre of space. It's something I just want to be careful about.
Can I feel like we're afraid of letting it go, actually. We're afraid of actually admitting the size of this council too, and this region, and our catchment. And I think we're afraid of being seen as anti-business in discussing, but there is probably an argument to be made that you get a better bang for buck if we actually continue to leverage our current business group and offered the entire business community ongoing business forum support, business program support. Would get better leverage and better growth out of our business community than, yes, worrying about 15 desks. And maybe we just need to not be guilty of letting this go. And, you know, down the track, 20 years down the track, when we got double the catchment, double the revenue as a council, can always reevaluate sponsoring a program like that. But a lot of the examples you mentioned are much wealthier communities and councils. And so it is a question. I think if we're talking about the ultimate goal is the business development, business growth and economic development, really those resources could be better spent elsewhere. And maybe we just have to have be frank about what we can do as a small regional council.
Andrew?
Just a quick one. It goes back to something Shane was raising before. I was conscious, I suppose, in previous reports we provided to council, and now thinking about this, the future of the site, that we can analyse all these different scenarios in terms of the business as usual, and should we include depreciation? Should we include lending costs if it was hypothetically run by a commercial entity? At the end of the day, I think Nathan, the mayor, hit it on the head, which is you're talking about breadcrumbs here. It's either running close to at parity or not far off it. The issue is more about what it could and should be rather than what it is. And I go back to what Shane was talking about, which is I wonder whether the organisation and maybe all of us have perhaps strong views about what decisions were made back in 2018, and maybe we made decisions in terms of money spent which we would do differently today in terms of governance, continuity, the level of service. I hear that there was a number of different contractors at the time over the period of when that external services were provided, so I'm not disparaging any of them. They all probably did their best, but I wonder whether or not, just because it wasn't particularly as effective as we would have liked back in 2018, that's tarnished the conversation to the point that no hub idea which involves an external will ever get up again. But I also take on board Chris's view and the view of the room, which is that yes, you can go to market and test a whole lot of different ideas as to who wants the space and come back for further discussions. We don't have to make a decision tonight. but I felt that we, at the risk of perhaps antagonising people by saying we might need to spend a few dollars, that we at least acknowledge that there could be some dollars on the table if we are to provide support services.
So Sanjay made the point that we're unique, that we have the space as opposed to most of those examples you gave. So if we went out to the markets may come up with something that we would never think of that would be very revolutionary and the next step in the next evolution of those sorts of things. You agree?
Fully, and having walked through the space, I saw, I pointed out to you when I was walking through, look at all this space, like, why don't you have a pod here and a podcasting here? There's just so much capacity of what I've seen work elsewhere, and it's just desks at the moment. So, I mean, I saw that with my external eyes of the opportunity it presents as a blank canvas, and I'm sure your local community would agree.
Yes, Nathan.
I have to say this. I mean, it seems to me that the hub space, if it's what are we going to use the space for? It should be considered a resource to the business community. And if it is got a podcast studio in there, great. And anyone in the business community who's a ratepayer is allowed to come in and do their thing and help with their own socials. If it's a resource for the business community, that's going to do 500-fold. You only have to increase the profit margins for 3%, by 3% to all the business community, and you've more than 10-folded the benefit of one business, one unicorn coming out of that space. So that seems like a more effective way of reaching the aims of trying to increase the economic well-being of this town and the business community, in my opinion. And that's just my opinion, of course. I'll leave it to wise council to decide.
Yeah, I think we do need to continue the conversations regardless, because we're currently talking about a space that's called Business Innovation Hub, but we clearly acknowledge that it's a business hub. It is a shared space where businesses took the opportunity, and that is not to take anything away from those businesses. I would have been doing exactly the same thing. I was in a shared business hub when I was running my own business. It became very beneficial because it was like-minded businesses all working in the same space, which I'm sure these businesses are benefiting from that. But the question is, do we want a business innovation hub to operate here in our civic centre? And what is the cost? What are we willing to invest in that? And what is the return on investment? And how do we scrutinise to make sure that we are making the right decisions when the options ultimately come up? Because I think we could sit here all night with all differing opinions, and I agree with Andrew. I think, and I did touch on it before, that some of us are a bit sheepish. We've been hurt before. We've lost a little bit of trust in that space, being able to give elected members the confidence to explain what the return on investment is for that space. The youth show downstairs, easy. I can tell you the benefits of that space in this civic centre. No worries at all. Resume building, barista courses, the governance learning that they're doing at the YAC, and all these other great things that come out of them. Because return on investment isn't necessarily always a monetary thing that ends up in a bank balance. Business Innovation Hub is great for those that jumped at the opportunity, and rightfully so, as those businesses. Is it fair and reasonable that it's subsidised by ratepayers and commercial neutrality being discussed and questioned, rightfully? And we still call it the Business Innovation Hub. I think those are the fundamentals of why Councillor Warner moved the motion and said we need to have these discussions, and we weren't always going to resolve it tonight in this workshop. But I am really happy to see that there is an appetite to continue the conversations, but I think we do need to go out to some sort of market. I don't think we're the first council that's dipped their toe in this space by any means, but there may be an opportunity, as Shane pointed out, that we do have this rare opportunity to say, hey, this is unique to the market. Hey, market, what do you got for us? Because we are in a growing region and we need to capitalise on it. What does that look like? So it'd be interesting to see what we could do as council to go out to market and the sector more broadly and say, what are our options? This is what we've got. Sell us. and then come back.
If I can add to that, there's also potential opportunities for grant funding or state government funding in this too. So Polaris does have a team of council staff who run the Polaris Centre and bring in other mentors and experts and run kind of sessions and workshops, events, rather than long-term programs, from my understanding of it still. But they also have significant amount of state government funding to run their programs elsewhere as well, and for more than just their council. And other councils have done it that way by getting funding from other organisations to help fund more broadly to cover those costs, as well as having participants often pay as well. Same with the Australian Centre for Business Growth. They generally target businesses which are further along, but there is substantial co-payment, recognising that businesses further along can have more skin in the game and can pay their own way further, but it is still subsidised by state government and also contributed for quite generously by the uni's time and their access to experts as well. Kind of a bit different to ThinkLab, which is at different stage businesses often. So there are opportunities that could be looked at over the next 12 months, as well as the opportunity we're losing out on potentially by not using the hub in other ways. But I think there's the hub as real estate versus programs that could be run whether or not we have the hub as well, that we should be considering.
Thank you, Laura. Any other comments?
Option 5, pencil in.
Option 5. Okay. So we go back to our...
Oh, that's coming back
So
there.
we're not in
Option 2.
We're still in the workshop motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask? So I guess it sounds like to me that I really should have given the mayor the last word. I think he summed it up nicely, but
I get the last word a lot.
so there's obviously an appetite to continue it, but I think it should, as long as you're going to put out for tender, just have some very clear understanding of, you know, what key outcomes you want from the prospectus, and that's, I think, really, really important. So, and for me, those opportunities are like, what are the industries that we can see hanging around from that development and actually benefiting this region, and that should be what the program is built around. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes, Matt.
Just in regards to the appetite to continue, maybe not 100% correct. So what I really think is whatever whether it's the business development group or the council, whatever we're putting in, the economic return needs to be tangible. We need to be able to see what's going out into it. If it's come from the business development group, then that money needs to be coming back into the businesses that are supporting it. And if it's the council, then I've got to go into the greater community. So I do have a real problem with subsidising specific few people. I don't see the benefit in that. Where we're going out to market, if we close it down, or utilising it in a more beneficial way for the community. That's where I see that we need to go. And going out to market, seeing what's there, happy to look at it and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I don't want to continue just subsidising a few people that they are making very good business decisions themselves. As Mayor Shank said, I'll do the same thing as I was in that position. If I had a nice little table and office to go to where I was paying bugger all for, I would do that. So we just need to make sure we're being smart for our community.
Civic outcomes in the civic centre.
I presume then, Chris, if you have a tender comes back and it says we're going to do wonders, and I can't say the rest of it, but you can then take that proposal to the federal government or the state government and say, look, this is what we want to do. Is there an opportunity for grant funding? If we have a clear picture of what we want to do.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hard question to answer till you see what you're going to get, but we have to keep an open mind. And it could be a state or a federal program. In best case, it's a fully funded private program. But yeah, I think we'd keep an open mind. That's the key here. think is what I'm hearing.
Can I jump in on that as well?
Yeah.
I would be probably slightly a bit more optimistic, because that economic growth pathways that some of those grant opportunities, and this is what our RDA is for, right? Like, you know, some of the advocacy side of things and what we might be able to develop up. We would hope that whatever programs came through hopefully does suit some examples that have been secured grant funding through feds or state in the past. But there is those economic stimulus grants around pretty regularly, isn't it?
Yeah, my only advice around that is, for example, say you've got a couple of year program that was funded, there needs to be a discipline with it that the council then doesn't inadvertently end up carrying the can 2 years later and decides to continue the program that inadvertently passes the cost back on the ratepayer. And you should embrace the opportunity it should present, but it needs to come with discipline, if that's, for example.
There seems, yeah. So, Nathan Shanks, Mayor, sorry. So you have an appetite. You have an appetite for this to run as a successful sort of innovation hub in a program model, and it's but you also got a question about where the funds come from as well. Is that right? So.
I have an appetite to make sure that our ratepayer money is invested in good community outcomes. If innovation or incubator in startup business, etc., is one of those community outcomes that we can show a return on investment, then absolutely. If a playground that costs $1.2 million benefits local families in the hundreds, in the thousands, absolutely. What I was saying about funding models, and Chris rightfully pointed out, because sometimes there is that cost shifting that happens to local government, actually a lot of the time, where we see an opportunity, we go, great, fully funded, how good? And you get these programs off the ground and they're fantastic in their first 12 months, 24 months, and all of a sudden government changes, budget changes, whatever changes, and those embedded now programs that you have in your community are now not funded. And it's on you as an elected member to tell your community why they're no longer available, or you are shifting rate revenue from other programs, or you hope you're in a better financial position to fund those programs. So some of those like economic stimulus grants or whatever else are probably more so, on hindsight, those one-off programs that you start something that helps seed fund something else, but hopefully becomes user pays or self-funds later on. And that's where you have to be careful not to jump at what sounds really good at the start. You need to weigh up what happens if that funding's pulled and whatever else. But to answer your first question, I have an appetite for economic stimulus in our community, but that could have completely different models tied to it. And I think some of these conversations that we're having tonight have gone, one on a real estate piece with the Business Innovation Hub that we have just across the hallway here, and then the other one is the program based. And I think we need to continue the conversations, but I think they could run concurrently in some options as well.
Yes, Chris?
Mr Chair, just a question, and so I can get this clear in my head. For example, if a private business came to us and we thought it was appropriate to be housed in that space and it was going to give us, exceptional rate of return, and council was to say, okay, we're going to use that space because it's going to generate X amount of funds, the council then quarantines for an economic outcome for the community. Is that palatable to the group?
Now, I guess to clarify, Chris, that would mean handing that area over to one business opportunity?
I'm not kind of constraining it to one, but I'm just trying to get my head around, just because if we go to market, we'll get lots of things come back. and some will be more community focused and let's call them altruistic. Some might be pure selfish endeavours where they think they can generate a return. Would it be palatable to this group if that was an outcome? Not preempting anything, just want to understand where the spectrum lies, that what we might willing to entertain, that's all.
Okay, Shane.
Not unless everything had been explored beforehand.
Yeah,
Like
fair.
if you hadn't gone to market and found out there might have been a great idea, it's a bit hard to swallow.
No, fair.
If the market came back and it was more of the same or it was too expensive, then anything could happen, I suppose. But they'd have to be complementary to the centre.
Yeah. Thank you. That's good feedback. So perhaps, and this is just to help me write the ad. A little bit later in the meeting, when you get to the point where you're going to perhaps give the council your thoughts, can I just ask you if you can put a little bit of meat in the bone for me, just about how you might think I'm going to articulate this to the broader world? Does that make sense?
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
I think generally my feedback would be that I'd like to see the space used to benefit a broad range of business people rather than individual, relatively few businesses who might, have a great idea and want to get something started. Yes.
Through the Chair, that might be through item 7.1 though, rather than 8.1, which is this information report. Yep.
So just to unpack that question then, Tony, if we were to get the opportunity to lease that space out commercially, have a return of, I'm just going to pick numbers just for the sake of the exercise, and the 2,000 surplus that generates this council now is a $100,000 surplus, which then allowed us to turn around and say, hey guys, your separate levy is now lower because we subsidise, and then that benefits all your levy payers, as an example, to benefit. That's a simple way of saying, yeah, that benefits. But is that what we're talking about? Or are we more talking about, no, it's the feelable programs and the economic outcomes, not just necessarily the lowering of the rate or investing in future programs, that sort of thing. Because prime real estate, we potentially could have a monetary return on investment really quickly and easily. And then that monetary investment return, we could invest into economic outcomes, potentially as well.
I mean, one of our pillars is thriving business. And I think the idea is that the hub should be in support of that aim. And so I guess if it's to be an incubator program, it's to be program specific. It sounds to me that we all agree that it must be grant funded, and then there must be a clear understanding in the community that if it's a 2-year program, it finishes after 2 years. And it must also benefit the whole community. And so there has to be the prospectus, or the sort of tender has to kind of articulate how it will benefit the whole community. And so whether it's that making sure that they have access to some of the keynote speakers that come through and so that the whole business community gets a sample of that program, through being an audience member, that's one way that you can sort of articulate the benefit for everyone. So that's just 2 points that I think we could potentially agree on as a path forward. Obviously, we need to make a decision, so it seems to me we know the budget's already I think we can all agree that we're going to push the can down the road, and sort of do business as usual to the end of this financial year. But those two things, I think maybe can we all agree that that's the path forward to try and while council's seeking that tender? Does that make sense?
Which to Nathan's point, Mayor Jackson's point, and to Chris, your worship, the programs and keynote speakers and things that run in that space, we should still be participating in, and we should be using the space to deliver those things, Tammy's table and all those sorts of things. So when you talk about taking the space out completely, that's a little hard to swallow if we haven't explored everything, because where does it end? You lease the whole joint out. You could meet back in the administration centre. So it's still a civic space.
But also, Shane, Nathan did add that the benefit of leasing it out could come back to the business community.
But does it? Does it go in general revenue?
I don't think that was his point.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't so.
Yeah.
Different one, yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Look, I propose that we end the workshop and move back to our formal agenda.
Actually, do we need to define what option 5 actually is? Because I think that's what we're voting on.
Yeah, that's what you can do with that.
Is it?
Okay, so...
Yeah, okay.
Now, could I have a mover to go back into formal meeting procedures? Moved Alex, seconded Crystal, thank you. All in favour? All in favour? All in favour? Thank you.
Thank you, councillors.
And thank you, Mayor Nathan, and thank you, councillors, for attending us. Thank you. Yes. Could we have a 5-minute break, everybody, and we'll regroup? Show of hands for a 5-minute break. Yeah, all good.
Done. I mean, we're here just to...
And we've got pre-programmed text, so we can just go. And thank you.
it's getting close to it. I think instead of better come and see.
Ideal. Yeah, ideal. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, that'll be 7.1.
I think so.
Yeah. Ready, set, go, you reckon? 8.1. I'll do
Do you
that.
even drink water? That's why you drink water.
Okay.
Scotch finger.
No, good, thanks.
Hang on, go on. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
Me with the Scotch finger.
resume meeting.
Oh, man. I didn't know I had that in me, to be honest. I'm still going. You know, like, the worst time they can do a job interview is first thing in the morning when they're just hungry, or just before lunch. Actually, just before lunch is the worst time to have a job interview.
Okay.
Because your mood can be, sorry, I know you're waiting for it to come.
Sorry, Alex. Okay, back to our meeting, ladies and gentlemen. We need to finish off on item 8.1 of our agenda, Business Innovation Hub Workshop. The officer's recommendation is that the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee, number one, receives the two presentations, notes the key issues and opportunities for the Business Innovation Hub raised during the workshop. Could I have a mover? Shane, seconder. Crystal, all in favour? All in favour? Thank you. Now we can move on back to our normal agenda order, onto decision reports, and 7.1 is the Business Innovation Hub Preferred Operational Model. Now we have a modified recommendation, and you may be able to see that on your screens.
I don't think it's come through yet. We'll just give us 1 sec. I've emailed a suggested draft for your consideration, and you can play with the wording when you see it.
It's worth waiting for, folks.
It's not great, but it's probably better than what you've got at the moment.
Okay, can everyone see that now on your screens? Okay, I'll just read that. The Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee recommends to Council that 1. Dependent on a decision on the future of the Business Innovation Hub, should it require funding, would be through Council and not the Gawler separate rate. Number 2, in the immediate short term, that the Business Innovation Hub continue in its current operational form, pending a formal decision by Council on the future of the Business Innovation Hub space. Number 3, an expression of interest process be prioritised for the Business Innovation Hub space, exploring all potential commercial and business-related opportunities that could be developed or delivered from the space. And number 4, further workshop be conducted to discuss the results of the expression of interest process.
Is that close?
Shane, any comments?
In number 3, an expression of interest process be prioritised for the Business Innovation Hub space in cooperation with the Gawler Business Economic Development Committee, because then we can look at the wording of any ads that go out. So what about this, that and the other?
So maybe just for the benefit of Susie.
Yeah, so an expression of interest process be prioritised for the Business Innovation Hub space in collaboration with the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee.
Great, that's perfect. So then we can bring in the kind of criteria.
Yeah.
Great.
The metrics of success.
Oh, we're already in the criteria.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Could I have a mover to accept that recommendation? Alex, Laura second, all in favour? All in favour, thank you. Okay, we can move on to item 7.2, the budget for 2026 and 27. Has everyone had an opportunity to read through that?
I just needed to remind everyone that I do have a conflict of
Yes.
interest, so while I will, it's general in nature, so I will manage it by, I will participate in the discussion, but I will leave the room when it comes to vote and wait outside until I'm called back in after voting.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Now, the officer's recommendation Can we run through that? Yes, Andrew?
Through the chair, I'm just thinking we can get a mover and a seconder in terms of what's before us, but clearly we want to go into a discussion thereafter. We've got a PACE proposal, which is something which isn't covered in the report. Understanding, and Sumi can correct me if I'm wrong, but Rotary as well have a view or a perspective on some support they would seek, which I haven't addressed in the report either.
That is for the Christmas parade, so which I think received $5,000 funding from Business Gawler last year. Was it 8? 8,000. Okay, so we've got the PACE art walk. We've got the Christmas parade, and also if you wanted to consider Louise and Karen's proposition for a conference. So,
like you're a participant in it.
yes. Yeah, I think the Kingsford Hotel will probably also display something.
Yeah, I think if it's available for business
Yes.
people to participate equally, then I think there's enough in common interest that it wouldn't be anything.
Yes. Yeah.
So move it a second, and then debate it.
Yes. So we'll run through the officer's recommendations, then we'll debate it. So. The Business and Economic Development Committee, number 1, notes the outcomes and expenditure of the 2025-26 Economic Development Program funded through the Business Development Separate Rate Levy, which is attachment 1 here. Number 2, supports the proposed 26-27 Economic Development Initiatives, also outlined in your agenda there with attachment 2, and supports the proposed allocation of Business Development Separate Rate Levy funding to deliver the 26-27 Economic Development Program, also as per attachment 2. So would it help if I summarise this briefly? Or do we need a mover and a seconder for that? Moved Shane, seconder Crystal.
So are we moving to accept the... It's just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can then make amendments.
Yeah. Okay. So the way, if just to generate some discussion.
You had a second before you get to it. You need a vote.
Yes.
You can move a seconder and then the mover.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So would you guys like to speak? Go ahead, Shane.
The PACE proposal, so we haven't factored that in here, but what line item are we going to run that under? Sort of events?
I haven't looked at the line item yet, but certainly you need to make an amendment to recommendation 3. So as modified with the following, for example, we'd put sub-elements in for whatever you agree to vary. But I would also foreshadow, though, that whilst we have a $12,000 contingency in our budget, the request is basically $13,000 by my crude maths, 5,000 plus 8,000, not including whatever the cost is going to be if you decide you want to support the conference, which could have a cost that I'm not even sure what that cost is, but it's between $10,000 and $30,000 potentially, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I mean, the visitor economy, both the parade and the PACE are visitor economy.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
The workshop, the conference, I think we nut out separately, but it's one where we could attract some sponsorship if we get to that point. So it's probably a broader discussion with Louise and Karen on that, I think.
I would suggest, through the chair, that on that, I think you almost need to workshop that through further, or staff would, and come back maybe at the August meeting with some further specifics, because it feels to me like you don't have anywhere near enough information.
Yeah, we've had sponsors for it before, $20,000.
Yeah, if you can get an idea of sponsorship and then what the gap's going to be,
yeah,
and what it is you're trying to achieve. Yeah.
I'd be very hesitant in the first year to run an awards and a conference. They are two significant events, and I would be strongly advocating for one, not both, because even if it's outsourced significantly, it takes so much staff time still to oversee that process if we're putting money towards it, if the council and the committee is going to put money behind it. So yeah, I'd be one or the other, not both in the first year.
Unless they came with a significant sponsor, and I mean, at some of the conferences is where they've had the awards presented as well, so combined them, but yeah, it'd have to be some significant sponsorship to be able to do it straight off the bat, I think. That's all I need to say as a mover. That's about it for me.
Thank you, Shane. Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question to the administration. These allocated funds are buckets of funds, right? So therefore, it's what we can play with within these allocations. Yeah, great. And so I guess under events we do have 15,000 there to play with essentially, and potentially we could use 5 of that for the Pace Festival, which is potentially has merit. I did have a question relating to some of the items. I mean, what was really nice, I'm trying to find the graph that you neatly put together, which showed all the sort of initiatives that were basically had no cost because you were going to use your internal resources. But I'm assuming that you can't prioritise all of them. So there is a question of prioritising out of that list what you can put your time to. Is that right? And if I can, and I don't want to, in the marketing line item you had no cost, and I thought that was curious because marketing should have a cost, and I was wondering whether if you could explain that more.
Maybe for the committee's benefit, we're better off just going through it pillar by pillar, and we're just working our way through it. If we've identified as a priority, it means we're going to deliver it. There's a lot of items that aren't on here which are in the draft economic development framework, which you've seen, which will go to council. So we've already filtered things that won't perhaps be delivered by Sim and myself and the funds we have available. But generally speaking, if we've said there's no funding required, we're doing it in-house, we're still doing it. It's just we're not using separate rate money to do so. So with the Chair's for willingness, I suggest we just go through it pillar by pillar and just tick off which ones you're happy with and which ones you're not, and what the dollar figures look like. And if you think there's a question against a particular matter and you think there's more money than it's got, then you tell me what that is as we go. That's probably the fastest way, isn't it?
It's okay.
Through the Chair, can I suggest we just go through the table, and then if people need further reference, we can then go into the actual which table you want to go to? Table
the one
page 24. Yeah.
Yeah. So I could summarise it quite quickly if you wanted to bear with me. But precinct activation, pillar 1. The nighttime economy has 10,000 against it, and that is designed to implement some of the recommendations that Damien McGee made at our last meeting. Could also involve joint promotion of marketing activities from the businesses in town on one platform. So it could be a digital platform of some kind, maybe a Facebook page or something like that. But that's work that would be done, and the council has allocated $10,000 for that. The second one is Pillar 2, investment attraction, and we're talking about an investment prospectus, $25,000. then we move on to the...
Sorry, just on that, broken into two parts though.
Yes, yes.
So if you look at the, it's page 16 of 46 or whatever page that number is. It's under Pillar 2, the first part of Pillar 2.
Yeah.
So $10,000 data analysis and $15,000 prospectus. So I think there is an element where we can do some work in-house ourselves with spend map and other data, but I think there's probably a need for a bit of additional support. Suman's spread fairly thin. And then actually the document itself, which I think is an additional element.
Yes, so do you see that $10,000 under Pillar 2 involving spend?
Well, we already have spend map, but I think in terms of just doing the analysis ourselves, but also getting external input would be where I'm thinking the analysis might be useful, and then turning that into a comprehensive prospectus document, which is part 2.
Yes.
Yep.
And I guess that would be a one-off time event.
Yep.
You know, you wouldn't be spending that money next
it's
following year. Yeah,
correct.
Essentially.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's a gap. I think council has had broadly, it's labelled them as prospectuses in the past, but I think it's more a thing you might take to Canberra, perhaps, as opposed to something which you'd go to market with and say, here are the specific opportunities to invest. Our gaps are X, Y, Z. And I think that's we need to get more specific as to what the opportunities are on the ground.
Yeah. And then under Pillar 3, the visitor economy, we've allocated $15,000. Now we're talking about event prospectuses or a calendar of events. Yep. Now, this will require a lot of research and work.
Yep.
I believe it's an area that, you know, I will always argue that spending money, you know, the separate rate should benefit as many businesses as we can. So I like the idea of you know, stimulating our town and growing our town. And so, you know, for example, I think we probably need at some stage to have a meeting, an informal meeting, to discuss events and ideas. And I know you've all got ideas on sorts of things we could do, and I think if we could land a first-class event for this town, which would line up with the Gawler show, the Gawler Cup, you know, the Christmas parade. We just need something significant. Then I think we would have great feedback from the business community generally. So.
Well, I certainly think, I mean, if you go back to some of the feedback from Damien McGee before, the event calendar was a key element of it. I think there's been a lack of coordination as to what that calendar looks like to date, but I think there's certain opportunity to get all the key businesses in the town and to look at the opportunities there and come up with something which actually would sell the town a lot more than has perhaps occurred to date. And I think that's where you sort of, I think you can link the pillars 1, 2, 3 and 4 together in various ways. They all kind of connect. Yeah. And that was certainly the idea behind presenting it.
Okay. And then finally we've got Pillar 4, thriving businesses. Thriving business, and 43,000 allocated to that, including a business awards function, 11,000, mentoring and capability related initiatives, 15,000, and then a business workshop, 17,000. So that section there, pillar, contributes 46% of our funding.
Just on that issue too, where it's got business workshops, networking and engagement, historically council or the committee have had Tammy's Table monthly, for example. The question would be whether we make that bi-monthly, just so you could spend your money more broadly across different things. You could have networking and business events maybe every quarter. We've done that quite successfully in recent times. I'm in the committee's hands on that, and we can flesh that out as we go along, but I think it'd be a mistake just to... how much, Suman, was the Tammy's commitment?
That's...
Is it 6,000? 7,000.
Paid bi-monthly here.
Exactly. So normally, she charges me $1,000 a month. So
That's 12,000 a year.
Monthly, so 6K, and we also cater for the catering aspect. So it's 6 plus 1K, 7K for as we go bi-monthly.
One of the things that has been raised with me on the Tammy's table is with the changes, whether or not it will continue, and if businesses outside of the levy-paying businesses will still be able to attend that, and if that will still be available. So I think that's important to understand as well. And if is it just if businesses outside the levy-paying area or outside town of Gawler, do they then pay a contribution to it? Because previously they paid for business Gawler membership, my understanding is, so that they had access to things like Tammy's table. But I think we just need to understand that a little bit as well, because that could potentially then, if we are charging others for those sessions, it can offset some of the other costs as well.
Certainly a tiered funding approach makes sense to me, which is those paying a separate rate should already have skin in the game, and they therefore should not be up for any... There's no charge at the moment, is there, for Tammy's table, or is there, for individuals?
No.
It's free for them.
So there was a cost because you had to be a member.
You have to be a member.
So you could actually just sort of factor that in somewhere.
Yeah.
So what was the cost to be a member? $150.
Right. And for that, you could get, in theory, 12 Tammy's tables in a year.
Which I've been... Yeah, from previously, I've been part of a group pre-COVID, so some time ago, similar format. We had a different topic each month, business owners, and it was $150 a month.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we might need to consider the costs of that and revisit that.
Model.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think $150 a year for 12 workshops is that's what, $12 a workshop. I haven't got a problem with it being effectively zero cost for a local business. That's fine. It's what it should be. But I think to buy into that and you're working physically, you're somewhere else. I think that's stretching. It's not an equity thing. Yeah. There.
Could I ask how many people attend Tammy's workshop?
It is capped. So I recently sat in on one, and there were probably about 8 or so of us around the table.
On average, it's 8 to 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they also have various topics during the month, depending on what the topic is. Say, for example, in August, if it's the new financial year budget, so normally the number do increases. So it all comes down to topic, but on average, between 8 to 12. Yeah. It seems to it seems to me quite reasonable that the levy, the special business levy, is spread around to other initiatives, and so I think Tammy's Table as an initiative should consider itself fortunate to hang on even at a bi-monthly level rather than a monthly level. Maybe we'll go to that part, then we'll take it as given then from the committee. That's the guidance we've been provided bi-monthly hereafter. So Simon, I'll get you to activate that. I guess the question which we talked about at the beginning was about, might have been Laura that mentioned it, was the question of the business awards versus the conference. So is there a view that, well, I thought in presenting the report that we should actually make a really good effort in this current financial year to deliver a top-notch business awards and acknowledge the businesses that make the effort that they do. It's probably more timely to do it now than probably ever before. And then I've seen it run well in other councils. And I think it also gives a chance for us to, through the selection panel, basically provide a whole lot of mentoring and support to those businesses at no cost to themselves, which I think is a great thing and done well. But I'm interested in your view on that versus other competing priorities, because there's lots of competing priorities for the dollars.
Are you saying complicating the awards night with additional, like turning it into a conference-like event? No,
I'm saying we do the awards night, and I'll come back to you in August as what to make of the pitch in terms of the conference, but I don't think it's a case of not having the annual awards because we're going to fund potentially a conference where we're not sure about the numbers or the dollars. Yeah. Mm.
Sorry, what was that?
They usually have the conference sort of October, November, so they're unlikely to get one together this year anyway.
No, it's almost too late.
Yeah.
I definitely am in favour of regular, consistent celebration of our community, business community. I think, especially if you're trying to motivate certain behaviours and discourage others, nothing better than celebrating, people doing the right thing. And it would make for an excellent end point to Suman's work at trying to galvanise those community networking events and workshopping events, and that sort of sense of business identity that we're trying to build. I think it's just a really important aspect. So yeah, I'm definitely, if I had to choose.
Okay. Shane.
We need to work out whether we're going to do this pace and this Rotary thing to shoehorn these in, yes?
Yeah. So I think we can, it's up to the committee, but I think we can get the PACE event into the budget. If we reforecast the contingency to go down from the 12,000 we've got there at the moment, assuming down to a figure of say 5 or 6, that means we've got, if the contingency was say $5,000, that means we've got $7,000.
The 15,000 for the festivals and new events, that...
Yeah, well, it can come out of the events, yeah. So the PACE could come out of the events budget.
Yeah.
And then the Rotary money could come out of the contingency budget.
Sure.
Ah, yes.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
4,000 contingency, we've still got money in the events budget.
Yeah.
I haven't heard about Rotary.
The events for the 15,000, that's provided we manage to find some in this financial year anyway. We're looking to investigate a bigger event.
As the Chair said, I think you need a bit of a workshop to think through things like the working group for the night economy, the events calendar, what the event priorities might be, which might be something offline from this.
Can I just make a comment regarding events? What's good about PACE is that we're not stressing about the administration of a festival, right? We're just paying the money and someone else is doing the sweat equity, putting in the tons of volunteer hours. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we want. We want to be able to outsource the labour, the sweat equity. So a situation where council is organising the awards night, that's really resource intensive. Yeah. Right? It'd be ideal. Yeah. Ideally, you'd get the Louise to do it, but I think her proposal is outside of our budget scope this time around. But it might be feasible down the track. So to me, it's a no-brainer. That's money well spent. That fact that it's activating a bunch of volunteers to go and make that happen, and that's what we're going to think about. Yeah. Yeah.
That seems reasonable. If that's what the committee wants to do, we can fund that. Okay. And then the other one was the Rotary. It was public liability. We do works in kind, don't we, Simon? Which is traffic management and other.
Yes.
Public liability insurance. Yeah. But I think they want $8,000 in cash. It's hard to say no to that, given what they're doing. So, which pillar did we put that against? Was that?
That was against the...
That was contingency budget, wasn't it? So just modify the contingency budget.
Comes down to 4.
To $4,000 to cover the Rotary request.
And then the Christmas parade.
That is Rotary.
That is the Christmas parade.
And
Rotary. But we've got.
Why do they call it Christmas parade?
Hang on, we've got the art walk.
Is it Club Gawler or Gawler?
The art walk is PACE. So that's
Gawler Light. It's Gawler Light. Now listen, just come back to clarify for me. The art walk, PACE.
Yep.
We'll get 8,000.
No, they wanted 5.
5,000.
From the events.
Yeah, from the events budget.
From the events, right?
Yeah.
And what about the Rotary Christmas parade?
That was 8,000.
And so have they asked for 8,000?
Susan says
8. For
they
the
have asked
Christmas
for
parade.
That's what they asked for. 8K.
So this is the Christmas parade.
That's a Christmas parade.
All right.
Yeah, can we put Christmas parade in parentheses?
Yeah.
And that's the insurance.
Yeah.
And so the 5,000 for PACE, she was wanting to use it this year for the website and the map
Yes,
So like businesses could actually track then.
yes.
And we're not the only funder for that, so.
Yeah,
so-
no, I love the idea.
I'm just thinking-
all about a yellow brick road style thing.
I think it's a good idea. I was just thinking out loud though, is it possible sooner, do you think, that we could provide a bit of in-kind support through Donna and the new, the enhanced graphics team we've now got with Andy being there? We might be able to do a little bit of help with the marketing or the documentation, which might give her more ability for that $5,000 to go further.
Yeah,
in fact, we'll take that offline. I mean, I think we could possibly explore how we can help a little bit.
And in line with the goals of trying to leverage the business community, I do feel like she hadn't thought of it, but there is an opportunity for her to sort of leverage the businesses that she's got on board, their social channels, because that's going to be way more effective. So I mentioned the idea she liked it, but if we could just maybe touch base with her and make sure that she... she's got digital assets to share with the business community to put it through their networks, to help make a success.
Going back to what you said, sorry, through the chair, you mentioned earlier right at the beginning of the debate about an item which you thought we should fund that I hadn't put money down against. Can you just remind me what that was? Marketing somewhere? Where was that?
And I'll have a look. It was... Which pillar?
Oh, 3.1.
3.1 is it?
It's marketing, but it,
Now,
no budget cost, is that the one?
that's right. Yeah, and so the thing about that, which I didn't maybe I didn't necessarily understand, is that there's a conflict there. It's about the idea is to implement digital marketing strategies, but then delivery is no cost because it's become a review to identify opportunities. So that's not an action. And so now you've dot pointed some ideas what could be actionable, but they obviously have cost. So I guess my question is, maybe those video content ideas, maybe that comes internally through your media team?
Well, through the chair, I was thinking we basically would get potentially our comms team to meet people like yourself and possibly a few other people in this room to get you to do sort of face-to-camera type stories of Gawler and being a business operator or demographic opportunities within the town.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was thinking without actually being specific.
Yeah.
Cody loves that stuff, so maybe Cody would be part of that too.
Yeah.
And then if we do the calendar on events and other things, I think it'll all come together and we can just create some stories that go across the year.
So that's how you...
Instagram.
So activating sweat equity is kind of your idea of how...
Yeah.
I get that.
So that's why I had no dollars against it. I thought we might be able to do it in a different way.
Yep.
All right. It's hard to explain that in writing, but
It looks like I'll be down at Salvo's.
Okay. Can we go back to the officer's recommendation, which is now being modified to include the Pace Festival at $5,000 and the Christmas Parade at $8,000? Everyone see that in their screens?
Chair, I think you need a fourth point, which might be that we could provide a separate report in August on on a response to the pitch tonight on the conference. Would that make a commitment either way? I think to do it justice, maybe Susan and I need to meet with them and have a chat and try and flesh out what that really means.
Yeah. It's not no.
It's not a no, but it's more a question of when. And it may be more like next financial year. But, yeah.
I think one of the big things on this is that we don't have enough of an understanding of what the business community want and need, and whether we're servicing town of Gawler, the region, South Australia on a conference like this. What do the key topics need to be? And I think potentially the quarterly workshops and increased data from the B2B program and the supercharged B2B program Gawler's had, and the development of the committee and the understanding the committee can gain from the community through their roles is really important to actually properly inform a conference.
I think our investment prospectus could inform.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
I think if you almost need to reverse engineer this where if I was doing a pitch to the committee, I would have thought I would know exactly what the dollar figure was, what the audience was. I know how much sponsorship I had, and here's the gap. This is where I need you. I mean, almost like what you got with Pace. They know exactly what their gap is, they know exactly what their audience is.
They can always refer to the past comments and tell us what they
Well, exactly. If you got that information, it wouldn't be too hard to work out. If you've got a guest speaker in your mind, you know it's going to cost you 10 to 15,000. Before you know it, your budget's 30. So if that's what the number is, and where does sponsorship fit into that?
Ideally, it's a profitable event, and it should be ticketed. And maybe the model that we could potentially look at supporting it is subsidising tickets for our community.
That's how you do it. It'd be either highly subsidised or free for members, but for those outside at an attractive price still, yes.
Okay.
So you need a move to adopt the modified.
Yes, could we have a mover to adopt the modified recommendation?
Yes,
Crystal?
I will move that.
And a seconder? Seconder, Stuart. Alex is the seconder.
Okay, so basically I'll put an amendment that the mover was
Crystal?
Crystal, and Alex,
Alex?
to add this to the original
Yes.
motion.
Okay.
Yep.
So now we've got the new motion. Well, all in favour? The new motion? No? Sorry.
We're just going to coordinate this properly.
Yes.
She's still here.
So we
Soon
should-
you're going to guard her out of the room.
We should...
So when
we
we
should...
vote though, do we have to have a certain amount of people here? Just 'cause,
You've got a quorum. You've got a quorum.
Yeah, we've got a quorum. It's 4.
You've got 4.
Oh, because you're included
So-
in the 4.
Yeah, 4 out of 6 is enough.
Okay, and we should also just record that Laura has left the meeting temporarily.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, we've got that. Everyone can see the new motion. So it's a matter of all in favour now. Correct? All in favour of the new motion. All in favour. Thank you. And we can ask all in favour. Just ask for a vote. Just ask for a vote.
Yeah.
You can bring it back now.
So the meeting procedures used to be carried unanimously, was
Yeah.
like that,
Yes.
recorded as a unanimous decision, or it was just carried. That's not a requirement anymore, but a lot of councils still do it. It's a bit of a hangover from the meeting regs years ago, and that's how the system's been configured here, so that's why we do that in practice. Yeah, but
Okay.
hey, you moving forward.
You can carry it.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Laura.
Thank you.
So that completes item 7.2 on our agenda.
By the time you got out there, voted.
Okay, moving on to item 7.3, current committee structure. And we'll just run through the officer's recommendation. This is relates to
This was third.
the resignation of Stuart McDonald. So that the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee, 1, notes the resignation of Mr Stuart McDonald from the committee. 2, notes that the committee continues to meet the membership requirements contained within its terms of reference. So in other words, we have enough members to comply with the terms of reference. Recommends to Council that the committee continue with its current membership composition. That means without replacing Stuart. And then item 4, write to Stuart McDonald, acknowledging and thanking him for his contribution, knowledge and service to the Gawler Business and Economic Development Committee. So, any comments? So, Laura's happy to move that. Could I have a seconder?
Do we have to pick an option or not?
No.
No, you just follow that. But
Move or you amend it.
Unless you disagree.
Unless you disagree.
With them, I want to amend the motion.
No, I agree. I've got ticks on all of those.
Okay, could I, so, show of hands?
Seconded.
Seconded Stuart. Sorry, Alex?
Just right.
I'll second. Okay, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay. Okay. Any questions without notice as we're up to it?
I do have one actually.
Yes, Shane.
I would be interested, almost as a matter of urgency, and I think this is useful for all that have live entertainment, including the council, of the new superannuation guarantee rules that have come in for performers, which it's really making a mess of a lot of festivals and things around the country right now. So if we could have an accountant or some advice brought to everyone, which will benefit our businesses, council itself for the Civic Centre, because you're hiring an act, you'd have to pay a super now, and the guy that runs the festival at the Prince Albert, he's thinking about throwing it in because he has 50 performers. He has to get all of their superannuation accounts and pay all of them. It's a loss-making exercise for the most part. It's for photographers, dancers, crew, everything. So if we could get someone, if Suman could speak to some of the local accounts or something, if we have to pay them even, probably would have to, if they could help with some advice around that for everybody. I think it'd be really beneficial.
Yeah, we'll come back on that one. Yep.
Thank you, Shane. Any other items or questions without notice? Anyone else? Yes, Crystal?
Just following up on kind of what Shane said, I just want to make note, obviously we're a few meetings deep now and we seem to be focusing on like the hospitality tourism sector right now, and especially given that the budget amendments were again like of the hospitality and tourism sector, I think that when we do need to organise an informal meeting pretty urgently, just to get some of our priority things ticked off. And I also wonder, because it's informal, do we look at inviting in key speakers from the community? I don't know if we do it at this initial workshop or we list up some things. I don't know how clued up we want to be. I'm just like mindful of time, given that next meeting's August and we've already got a heck of a lot of other things to decide, and a large portion of our budget actually is heavily on hospitality events as well.
It's an offline conversation about when to have the meeting, but next couple of weeks I'd say you're going to need to convene somewhere agreeable locally.
Yeah.
And soon enough come on.
Yep.
Take some notes.
Yep.
Is there a timing suits people? Is Monday nights a suitable
Monday nights
time?
are good.
So how about making a time now? Everyone look at their phones and see when they're available. Well, would you like to meet next Monday night?
I prefer, Monday night would be preference not to, but Gatty has an event that evening that I'm coordinating. I could make one later if need be, but maybe another week to prepare.
To the week after.
What about the 27th of July? Does that suit you, Andrew, Suman?
Check. Are we going to have dinner together? Is that what we're... Yeah. We'll have dinner.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to say. Does it have to be a nighttime meeting? Could it be like an afternoon meeting? I don't know what work commitments look like for everybody.
Brief for me.
How are you guys going with afternoons?
No afternoons.
I would have to do it in my own time.
In your, no,
this
that's
is my
fine.
own time. So hours does make it more straightforward, but
Would people prefer to be earlier after hours? Like, could you meet at 5:30?
Yeah.
Would 5:30 make it easier?
I'm going to need 2 hours to go through everything and
Yeah.
get your head around exactly how we move forward and provide what you need.
Yeah.
Are we talking about informal here, or can we go to a pub?
Just really want to go to
It's a ladder. I mean, you can do it here, but do you want to do it here or do you want to do it
You just need a whiteboard, I think, and maybe bring some catering in. We could do that.
Yeah.
Really quiet.
Yeah.
I just inform me. We should, like, 'cause it's just.
Maybe we do it here so
I
that
just think about food.
we can provide it in here and just get Divine to bring some food up.
And just
Do that.
okay, just clarifying that we're really going to be.
If the room's free, subject to the room being free.
The purpose of this meeting is to. Going to outline this to see if you're all on the same page. Is to talk about events, ideas for events, something to promote the town. Correct?
Yes, and possibly bring up some of the challenges that are going to exist with this. Like, this could be the perfect setting to bring in. Yeah. Yeah.
Say that again?
Awful. The superannuation guarantee is chaos. It's too massive. There's a blues festival, jazz festival, New South Wales, Canada, 3 hour performance. Gosh. Just, that school kids perform as well.
So research
the opportunity.
So is it, but it's not, you also mentioned something about where I sort of focus too much on retail hospo as well. So is there
No, it's not we're focusing too much. I just remember like earlier on we spoke about potentially looking at a quarter of an industry focus, and I think like naturally we just gravitated to like hospitality and tourism, but I think given how long everything's taking, I think instead of moving from quarterly we almost need to move to like, a half yearly focus is on like hospitality and maybe tie in like retail and tourism.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, guys, that it's not really a question without notice. I reckon we should wind this up, and this is almost after the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Work through the logistics of where we are.
Okay, so look, at this stage, we're up to.
We basically finished 11, unless there's most
So
without
there's
notice.
no other motions without notice? No other motions without notice? So we can close the meeting?
Right, back to you, Crystal. Sorry. It's just because of the...
Oh, yeah, no.
So closing the meeting at